Hi, everybody. This is Gatsad. Yesterday, I was training on my elliptical at home, watching a Netflix documentary titled Coffee for All. It's a 2017 documentary. And at one point during the documentary, a gentleman describes a ritual uh, termed suspended coffee, which I'll get back to in a second, because it actually speaks to an evolutionary phenomenon that I discuss in both my 2007 book, The Evolutionary Bases of Consumption, and then in my 2011 book, The Consuming Instinct. So, stepping back for a second, in my 2007 book, I talk about philanthropy as a costly signal. The idea being that oftentimes people are very altruistic and are very philanthropic, not just because they're selfless, generous being, but because it also serves as an honest signal of their wealth, of their social status, and so on. We seldom have cancer wings that are referred to as the XXX anonymous donor wing, but it might be referred to as the Joe Smith oncology wing. And that serves as an honest signal in that it is difficult for others who don't have as much money to imitate that signal, right? This is precisely why the uppers, the top echelon of any social stratum, often will not drive fancy cars, because driving a fancy car is not an honest signal of your wealth when you're a billionaire. Everybody who is within your social circle could imitate that signal. And therefore, it's usually the nouveau riche that drive the Maseratis and Ferraris and so on. But in any case, while talking about various evolutionary mechanisms linked to conspicuous consumption, in my 2007 book, I talk about uh, Maimonides, who was a very famous rabbi and physician and philosopher. So, Maimonides, who was born close to 900 years ago, was ultimately a Darwinist at heart. He may have not known about evolutionary theory, but he certainly knew about some insights into human nature. And at one point, he's discussing tzedakah, which is righteous and just giving, a form of pious charity, if you'd like. And this is a Hebrew word, tzedakah. And when discussing this, he refers to 8 levels of tzedakah. One of the highest levels of which is when neither the benefactor or the altruist nor the recipient of the act, of the kind act or the generous act, are aware of one another's identity. In other words, there's no social benefit, no reputational benefit that could be reaped in being an altruist, and therefore this is certainly a higher form of tzedakah than when you are reaping all the rewards for everybody recognizing you that you're a great guy. I pick up on that point in the 2011 book, The Consuming Instinct, where I refer to a episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry David and Ted Danson both have donated to a cause, but everybody knows that Larry David has donated. He's publicly stated that he has done so, whereas Ted Danson had apparently been an anonymous benefactor. And yet everybody's coming up to Ted Danson congratulating him on his generosity, and that ends up irking Larry David because, like a true Darwinist, he's upset that, here you are getting all of the rewards for your generosity, and yet you're pretending that it is anonymous. It's not anonymous. And so, in that sense, that violates the tzedakah edict of Maimonides. By the way, here is, I know it's mirrored, it's backwards, but here's a very nice and short biography on Maimonides if you want to read it. Quite interesting. I read it a few years ago. So now, how does that relate to the documentary? How does something that a Jewish philosopher from, 12th century, how is that relevant to the practice of coffee drinking and cafes as covered in the contemporary documentary that I just watched? Well, suspended coffee turns out to be the following. Suppose you walk into a coffee shop somewhere in Naples, and you're well to do. You've got enough means to afford a coffee for yourself, but you know that a lot of people out there in the streets can't afford a wonderful aromatic coffee. Then what you do is you purchase a second coffee, which becomes, quote, suspended in that eventually it will find someone who will take it. So someone can walk in off the street, and if there is a suspended coffee available, then they get it. But what is important, as stated in the documentary, is that the person who purchases the suspended coffee and the one who receives the suspended coffee do not know one another's identity. So it is exactly what Maimonides referred to many, many centuries ago. So this is one of those wonderful instances where you take an important insight that someone arrived at many, many hundred years ago. And in my case, I offer an evolutionary mechanism that explains why that edict exists, and then you identify it in a completely different context. So there you have it. This is where Rabbi Maimonides, evolutionary theory, and suspended coffees meet. I hope that you're having a good weekend. I tried to take a bit of a break this weekend from social media, trying to recharge the battery. Hope you're doing well, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. Many thanks for all of the lovely messages of support that I've been receiving from folks. Much appreciated. Cheers.